Let me ask you a simple question. What are you postponing right now? What dream, what goal, what responsibility have you shelved, telling yourself I'll get to it tomorrow, or maybe Monday, or next month, or when you're finally in the mood? Let me be blunt. Laziness isn't just about lying on the couch. Laziness is a habit. It's a belief system. And worst of all, it's a lie we whisper to ourselves and pretend not to hear. We say we're tired, but we've spent more time scrolling than building. We say we're confused, but we've avoided the work that would bring us clarity. We say we're not ready when deep down we're just scared to begin. But here's the truth you already know you have work to do. Laziness is often misunderstood. People wear it like a label, I'm just a lazy person, they say, as if it's a fixed part of who they are. But that's not true. Laziness is not your identity. It's not your personality. It's a pattern, a habit. And like all habits, it can be unlearned, replaced, and rewired. The problem begins when we confuse our behavior with our worth. If you've been avoiding your goals, delaying important work, or constantly procrastinating, it's easy to internalize the belief that you're somehow flawed or broken. You start believing this is just who you are. But that's a lie. Laziness is not a personality trait. It's a repeated decision to choose comfort over progress. And that decision is often rooted in fear, not apathy. Think about it. When you put off something meaningful, it's not because you don't care. It's because deep down you care so much that the risk of failure feels overwhelming. It's easier to stay still than to try and fall short. So we reach for distractions. We create fake busyness. We convince ourselves that it's not the right time, that we need more clarity, that motivation will show up tomorrow. But it never does, because motivation doesn't come before action, it comes from action. Most people aren't truly lazy, they're just disconnected from purpose. They haven't built the mental muscle to push through resistance, or they haven't yet linked their daily efforts to something bigger than themselves. If you believe your actions matter, if you truly understand why your work is meaningful, laziness begins to fade. Purpose ignites discipline. It gives your effort direction. Another reason laziness lingers is because it becomes a comfortable loop. Wake up, avoid the hard stuff, feel guilty, distract yourself, go to bed frustrated. Repeat. But here's the hopeful truth. The moment you break that cycle, just once you prove to yourself that it's possible. You don't need a massive transformation to kill laziness. You need one small win. One action that says, I'm in charge now. That might be sending the email you've put off, going for the run you promised yourself, or writing the first paragraph of the project you've been dreaming about. Momentum doesn't come from motivation, it comes from movement. It's also important to be honest with yourself. Sometimes what looks like laziness is actually exhaustion, burnout, or a lack of clarity. If you're overwhelmed, take a step back. Rest, reflect, realign. But don't confuse rest with retreat. Don't let tiredness become a permanent excuse. Laziness thrives in the space where we stop asking more of ourselves. So ask more. Expect more. Not because you have to prove anything to the world, but because your future self is counting on you. You are not lazy. You've just built routines around hesitation instead of execution. And you have the power to change that right now. Not by overhauling your life, but by deciding that laziness doesn't get to sit in the driver's seat in there. It may still be in the car, whispering doubts and distractions, but it doesn't control the wheel. Your identity is shaped by what you repeatedly do. So if you want to stop feeling lazy, stop doing lazy. Build a new habit, one of showing up even when you don't feel like it, of doing the work, not perfectly, but consistently. Over time, that becomes who you are, not a lazy person trying to change, but a disciplined person who you already know the work that matters. You do. It's not hidden in some mystery. It's not waiting to be revealed through 1,000 YouTube videos or 100 books. It's already in your mind, tugging at your thoughts in quiet moments. It's a thing you keep thinking about when you're alone, when the noise dies down, when the distractions fall away. It's the idea you keep coming back to, the goal, the project, the dream you tell yourself you'll start someday. The truth is, most people aren't lost, they're avoiding. They say they're confused, but confusion is often a disguise for fear. Because when you truly commit to the work that matters, you can't hide anymore. You have to show up. You have to face discomfort. You have to risk failing, looking foolish, or discovering that progress takes far longer than you hoped. So instead, we stay busy with the work that doesn't matter. We answer emails, organize our space, tweak our schedule, read productivity tips, everything except what actually moves us forward. But deep down, you know what needs to be done. You know the difference between activity and progress. You can feel it. The work that matters might not be glamorous. It might not even be urgent. But it's important. And importance carries a weight. That weight is responsibility. You know that if you do this work, really do it, it could change things. It could lead to a breakthrough. It could turn your ideas into something real. That's why it's scary. The work that matters is rarely loud. It doesn't shout at you from your phone or beg for attention. It waits quietly in the background, hoping you'll get tired of excuses. It's not going to fight for your focus. You have to give it freely. And that requires honesty. It requires you to admit to yourself that you've been stalling, that all the distractions are self-imposed, that the path forward is clearer than you pretend. You may not have every answer, every step planned out, but you do know what to do next. And that's enough. That next step might be writing the first page, making the first call, practicing the first rep, posting the first video, saving the first dollar. Whatever it is, you know it. You've known it for a while. The question is, will you finally do it? We spend so much time preparing to begin that we forget the beginning is the preparation. You don't figure it all out before you start, you figure it out by starting. Waiting for clarity, for motivation, for the perfect moment is just a form of resistance. It's a way to stay in your comfort zone while pretending you're making progress. But you're not fooling anyone, not even yourself. Real fulfillment doesn't come from doing more, it comes from doing what matters. And when you consistently neglect that, a quiet frustration builds. You feel it as restlessness, guilt, even burnout. Because busy work drains you, but meaningful work fuels you even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So stop pretending you don't know. Stop lying to yourself that you're unsure. You are not unsure. You're just scared. And that's okay, but fear is not a reason to quit. Fear is a signal that you're on the edge of something that matters. You already know the work that matters. Now prove it to yourself by doing it. Excuses feel good in the moment. They let you off the hook. They give you permission to delay, to avoid, to stay comfortable. When you tell yourself, I'm too tired or I'll start tomorrow, it feels like relief, like you've just bought yourself time. But that feeling is temporary. Excuses are comforting because they allow you to escape the pressure of taking responsibility, but the cost comes later. And the price is always higher than it seemed at first. Every excuse you make builds a wall between you and the life you want. One brick at a time. It doesn't feel like much when you do it once. But excuses rarely happen just once. They multiply. They compound. And eventually you find yourself stuck, wondering why nothing's changing. Why your goals still feel far away. Why you feel disappointed in yourself, even when you've been busy. It's because you've been choosing short-term comfort over long-term progress. And excuses are the currency of that trade. The most dangerous thing about excuses is how rational they sound. You tell yourself it's not the right time, that you need more research, that you're not feeling inspired. These aren't outrageous claims. They seem valid, even smart. That's what makes them so hard to resist. But underneath them all is the same truth. You don't want to feel uncomfortable. You don't want to risk failing. You don't want to face the work. So you dress it up with logic and delay the decision again. But every time you give in to an excuse, you're reinforcing a story that you're not capable, that you're not ready, that your goals are optional. And over time, those stories become beliefs. Those beliefs become identity. That's the real cost. Not just lost time, but lost confidence. Lost trust in yourself. The longer you make excuses, the harder it becomes to believe your own promises. You start to expect inconsistency from yourself, and that feeling eats away at your motivation from the inside. Excuses are clever. They can make you feel justified while they quietly steal your potential. They disguise themselves as rest when really they're retreat. They pretend to be strategic waiting when really they're fear-driven stalling. And while they offer a temporary shield from discomfort, they also block you from growth, from pride, and from the satisfaction of following through. Here's the truth. Doing hard things will never be convenient. You will rarely feel like starting. You will almost always have a reason to put it off, but discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what you want and what you're willing to do for it. You can't build anything meaningful on a foundation of excuses. Dreams require action. Goals require sacrifice. And growth requires you to show up, especially when it's inconvenient. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be honest. Honest enough to call out your own excuses when they show up. Honest enough to say, I'm scared, but I'm doing it anyway. That's how you take back control. That's how you begin to build momentum. No one's saying it's easy, but it is worth it. Every excuse you resist becomes a small victory. Every time you act in spite of resistance, you chip away at the version of yourself that settles. And little by little, you become someone different, someone reliable, someone powerful, someone who follows through. So the next time an excuse whispers in your ear, pause Ask yourself, what is this really costing me? Because the price of comfort is your progress. And at some point, that's too high a price to pay. Progress doesn't require a grand plan. It doesn't demand perfect timing, ideal conditions, or flawless execution. It begins with something far more simple and far more powerful. The next right move. That small, often unimpressive step forward. Not the leap, not the breakthrough, just the next thing you know you need to do. This is where so many people get stuck. They wait. They wait for clarity, for motivation, for certainty, for some moment where everything aligns and they feel totally ready to take action. But the truth is, that moment rarely comes. And while you wait, life moves on. The people who grow, the ones who make something out of themselves, they're not necessarily smarter or more talented. They're just the ones who act. They move forward step by step while others hesitate. The power of the next right move lies in its simplicity. It's not about figuring out the whole journey. You don't need to know what step 20 looks like when you're on step 1. You only need to do what you already know needs to be done. That email you've been avoiding, that workout you skipped, that call you need to make, that decision you've been putting off, you know what it is. And you know it matters. What makes this approach so effective is that it shrinks the problem. Instead of being overwhelmed by the size of your goal or the uncertainty of the future, you focus only on what's within reach. You create momentum. And momentum is what breaks through doubt, because action breeds clarity. You often don't get clarity before you start, you earn it through movement. By taking that next step, you start to see things differently. You learn, you adapt, you uncover the step after that and the one after that. Waiting feels safe. Planning feels productive. But neither is a substitute for execution. You don't need to have it all figured out. In fact, you can't. Progress is rarely a straight line. You'll make mistakes. You'll pivot, you'll hit obstacles, but you'll be in motion. And that matters more than anything, because you can't adjust the direction of a ship that's anchored. You have to start moving before you can steer. Sometimes the next right move is uncomfortable. It pushes you. It challenges your fear. It forces you to face resistance. But that's the point. That's where growth begins. The moment you stop negotiating with yourself and just do the thing, even when it's small, even when no one else sees it, you begin to transform. Not just your results, but your identity. You start seeing yourself as someone who takes action, who doesn't wait for perfect conditions to begin. And yes, sometimes you'll make the wrong move. Sometimes what you thought was right turns out to be a detour. That's okay. Forward isn't always a straight path, but it's still forward. Every action, every attempt, every stumble teaches you something. You learn more from a wrong move than from standing still. So if you're stuck, overwhelmed, or discouraged, forget the big picture for a moment. Zoom in. Ask yourself, what's the next right move? Not the best move. Not the most impressive one. Just the next right one. Then do it. Do it without overthinking, without waiting for motivation, without asking for permission. Progress isn't found in massive effort. It's built in quiet, consistent decisions. And it always begins the same way with the next right move. No one is coming to save you. Not the perfect mentor, not the right moment, not some sudden burst of motivation. No one is going to swoop in, fix your problems, give you permission, or make your life easier. And while that might sound harsh at first, it's actually one of the most empowering truths you'll ever accept, because it puts all the power back in your hands. It's tempting to wait, to tell yourself that once things settle down, once someone notices your potential, once the timing feels right, then everything will fall into place. But that kind of thinking leads to disappointment, not progress. Life doesn't hand out success based on potential. It responds to action. Consistent, uncomfortable, imperfect action taken by you, not for you. We grow up surrounded by stories of rescue. In movies and books, there's always a turning point where someone steps in, changes everything, and gives the main character a new shot at life. But this is real life, and the truth is far less dramatic. Change begins the moment you stop waiting and start doing. The moment you decide that you're not going to wait for circumstances to be easier, that you're not going to depend on someone else to get you out of the place you're in. Because the longer you wait for someone to save you, the deeper you sink into passivity. You stop trying, you stop solving, you let your strength dull because you think it's someone else's job to sharpen it. But no one knows your pain, your dreams, or your vision the way you do. No one is as invested in your success as you should be. That's not selfish, it's necessary. Responsibility is heavy, but it's also free. When you realize that no one is coming to save you, you stop outsourcing your power. You stop blaming others, the world, or the past. You start looking at what you can control, your habits, your attitude, your effort, your mindset. And that shift changes everything. This doesn't mean you never ask for help. It doesn't mean you do it all alone. Support is important. Guidance is valuable. But there's a difference between using support as a tool and depending on it as a crutch. When you believe someone else has to fix your life, you stop fixing it yourself. You give up the driver's seat. Taking ownership means looking in the mirror and saying, it's on me. Not in a self-blaming way, but in a self-empowering one. Because once you claim responsibility, you also claim the right to change. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the author of your future. It starts with a choice. A choice to stop waiting. A choice to start building. Maybe no one is. Clapping. Maybe no one sees what you're doing. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you move, that you try, that you do the thing you know you've been avoiding. There is strength in self-reliance not because you never need others, but because you never wait for them. You lead your own rescue mission. You build your own momentum. You earn your confidence not from being rescued, but from showing up for yourself day after day. So no one is coming to save you, and that's okay, because you are not helpless. You are not powerless. You have everything you need to begin right now. And the moment you stop waiting is the moment you start winning. Laziness isn't a lack of ability, it's a lack of clarity, a lack of urgency, a lack of connection to something that truly matters. Most people aren't lazy because they don't want to succeed. They're lazy because they don't feel a deep enough reason to push through the resistance. That's where purpose comes in. Purpose is the antidote to laziness. It gives your effort meaning, your actions weight, and your time direction. And when purpose is paired with action, laziness doesn't stand a chance. Purpose doesn't have to be some grand world-changing mission. It just needs to be honest, real, personal, something that matters to you. Maybe it's building a better life for your family. Maybe it's proving something to yourself. Maybe it's getting healthy so you can be around longer for the people you love. Purpose is whatever keeps you moving when motivation disappears. It's the deeper why behind the work, the reason to keep showing up, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it. But purpose alone isn't enough. You also need action. Small, daily, deliberate action. This is where most people fail, not because they don't care, because they wait. They wait for the perfect plan, the perfect mood, the perfect time. But waiting fuels laziness. It creates mental clutter, endless overthinking, and self-doubt. Action clears the fog. It builds momentum. Even imperfect, messy, inconsistent action is better than none at all. Every time you take action, you weaken laziness. You prove to yourself that you're capable. You teach your brain that movement, not comfort, is the priority. And it doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need to overhaul your entire routine or make a huge change overnight. What you need is one step, just one. The next right move. That's how discipline is built, not from intensity, but from consistency. Laziness thrives on comfort and excuses. It feeds on indecision. So if you want to kill it, you have to get uncomfortable. You have to train yourself to move even when your mind says not now. Because the truth is, laziness will always whisper in your ear. It will always find reasons to slow down, to stop, to do it later. But your purpose, if it's clear and real, will always speak louder. You just have to choose to listen. And here's something most people don't realize. Action creates energy. People think they need energy to act, but it works the other way around. When you move, when you show up, when you do the hard things first, your mind wakes up. Your body catches up. Your momentum builds. What felt heavy an hour ago suddenly feels possible. That's the power of acting in alignment with purpose. It turns effort into fulfillment. Laziness is a habit, not a life sentence. And like any habit, it can be replaced, but not with more thinking, not with more planning, with doing, with showing up, with working your plan, even when it's boring, even when it's hard, even when no one's watching. Because every day you act despite laziness, you build self-respect, you build identity. You go from someone who wishes to someone who works, from someone who waits to someone who leads. If you want to kill laziness, stop giving it a seat at the table. Reconnect to your purpose. Remind yourself why you started, and then move. Move even if it's slow. Move even if you're tired. Because purpose without action is just a dream. But purpose with action, that's a weapon. That's how laziness dies.